everyone, and welcome back to ScoreVision Advantage. I'm excited to share another special episode with you all. Today, we are joined by Geoff Exstrom, the Director of Communications, Media, and Broadcasting for the Supernovas, a professional indoor women's volleyball team based in Omaha, Nebraska. Geoff has extensive experience in journalism and broadcasting, serving as staff writer for Rivals Inside Nebraska, the Lincoln Journal-Star, and a former co-host of the Athletes Unfiltered podcast with former Nebraska quarterback Adrian Martinez. He graduated in 2022 with the sports media and broadcast production degree from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. While in college, Geoff was the KRNU sports director, wrote for the Lincoln Journal-Star, and broadcast numerous sporting events on the radio and TV. He is a Kearney, Nebraska native and an avid Nebraska Cornhusker, Chicago Bears, Cubs, and Blackhawks fan. We are excited to have him join us on today's podcast to share his experience in communications and broadcasting. Now on to today's episode. Cool. Well, first and foremost, Geoff, welcome in.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know that everyone's going to learn a lot from you, and obviously, you have a very diverse background. I would say diverse, between being a sports writer and then also the broadcasting side. You're very well-rounded. So I just kind of wanted to start off by hearing a little bit about your story and what got you into the sports industry in the first place.
Yeah, so it's quite funny because growing up, sports was always a thing in my household. My parents liked to bring up the story where, and I did this often, I'd go out in my front yard, my house in Kearney, Nebraska, and I'd throw the football to myself, like commentating certain moments. I'd pretend I'm a Nebraska wide receiver catching the game-winning touchdown against Oklahoma, for example. And so sports has always been a big thing for me, and that kind of just extended as I grew up in Kearney, playing all the sports that I could, football, basketball, soccer, but that was short-lived, street hockey even in high school, so everything. And in regard to sports media, obviously college football is my favorite sport, I'd say, so just I would watch that growing up all the time. And when I got to my junior year of high school, well, actually sophomore year of high school, played football, and funny enough, the sophomore head coach was my homeroom teacher. And at the end of the year, he brings me up and he's like, "Geoff, what, you planning to go play football again next year?" And I'm like, "Well, that's the plan right now." And he's like, "Well, I have Mr. Robert Goff, who I had known kind of a little bit through church, and he had mentioned that he's creating a broadcasting program. And at the time, I was working as a board op for Platte River Radio, local radio station in Kearney, and Mr. Stephen Cherry was my homeroom teacher. He drew that connection and was like, "Hey, why don't you team up with Mr. Goff and start this broadcasting program?" And it must have like just naturally clicked because I was like, "Okay, yeah, let's do it." And because I was not very good at football, I will say. And being up in the booth and calling football games versus being out in the weather and cold and maybe not even playing that much sounded a little better. So from there, spearheaded the Kearney High broadcasting program, started in the fall of 2018. And within the first few minutes of my first call, which was Kearney High versus Lincoln East, I knew within like the first 5 minutes of making that call, it's like, okay, this is what I want to do.
Yeah. First off, we love Kearney High School here because we're very familiar with Rob Goff.
Yep.
But it's amazing what he's done there.
Yep.
It's incredible between the broadcasting program and then now their whole entire sports production. I didn't know. So were you interning or something like as a high schooler for the radio station, or what was that connection?
So again, that's another funny story. Happened sophomore year. I'm walking down the hall next to the cafeteria, and out of the corner of my eye, there's a bulletin board with a bunch of like jobs post, help wanted. And at the corner of my eye, I spotted like sports producer, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. Take a look. It's for Platte River Radio. It's a board op for high school sports." And it's like, "Oh, I got to be 16. I got to drive my own car." And I brought it home, told my mom about it, but like how I couldn't because I couldn't drive. And she's like, "Don't worry about it. Let's go down and let's see what they say." And so we went down, and they actually weren't really concerned about that at all as long as I had a ride there and back. So applied for it, got hired, and I worked there for the rest of my high school career. It's about 4 years.
That's amazing.
Yep.
What a good opportunity,
Yep.
especially for high school students. Like, I feel like you don't hear that very often. So tell us a little bit about how that then transitioned into your college experience, because obviously you went to the University of Nebraska, right? And then were you working for the Lincoln Journal-Star while you were in college?
Correct. Yep, that was about sophomore year as well.
Okay. And then at that point, you were just kind of advancing your writing skills. And I think that that's something I kind of want to touch on here is overall, because of the versatility of what you've done in your career, you've probably picked up so many different skills. And what has that looked like, and how has that transitioned now into the role that you're playing at Supernovas, and as the director of media and communications and broadcasting?
So what I say all the time about getting the Supernovas role. So my first job out of college was Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com for those who don't know. Main beat writer for volleyball, football, and I dove into other sports, women's basketball, wrestling, all that sort. And so along with the Lincoln Journal-Star, got the experience of covering major sports as a beat writer and getting that perspective as a reporter in terms of breaking news, writing game previews, writing game recaps, features, all that sort of jazz. And when I got the role with the Supernovas, all of a sudden I went from one side of the coin to the other. And I always say that I wouldn't be as good as I am now with the Supernovas if I didn't have that experience before of knowing of who I'm interacting with and being able to get inside the mind of a reporter and anticipating what they're going to ask, what kind of needs they have, and just anything of that sort. So it's about really getting different perspectives to help your current role. And I felt like my experience not only in college, but especially at Inside Nebraska, knowing that side of the coin really helped me with director of comms, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, I was doing your job 2 years ago. I know what you need and what you need to accomplish. So that's really, really helped and has been a massive help with that.
So thinking about that a little bit more too, I feel like part of your role right now is very collaborative, right? Like you're working with the media, you're also working internally with all of your different teams, like specifically marketing, I'm sure. Do you guys separate out marketing from social media? Probably a little bit.
Yeah, we do a little bit. Yep.
Yeah. And then also just like, it's just like a very well-rounded experience, right? And you were just telling me just a second ago, especially in the off season, you're working across all teams a lot more frequently. Can you just kind of talk a little bit about like what does that collaboration look like in the industry, especially once you get into like the professional level, and then maybe a little bit of like how that has been differed from what you were doing prior when you were in college and in high school. I feel like the teams are smaller, so the collaboration probably looks different.
Yeah, so to give you a little bit of perspective, we have the number one average attendance in pro volleyball in the world. We bumped that average to nearly 11,000 people per match over 14 home matches this year. Welcomed over 152,000 total fans to CHI for the season.
So many people.
So many. 14 home matches, and that includes last year where we had 12 home matches and then the PVF championships. We've done that with a full-time staff of less than a dozen.
That is what? How do you guys even pull that off?
Hard work, long hours,
a lot of collaboration.
Yes, a lot of collaboration. And it's weird because defining collaboration is different for a lot of people, but with as small of a team we are and the talent that we have, we really think we got really lucky with the staff we have. Everyone is such an expert in their own field that there isn't necessarily a big help needed in everyone's field. It's just more of coming together, getting feedback, and how we can elevate and then go back and execute. There really isn't a being like, oh, I'm really struggling, I need help here. No, everyone like has control of their area and they need feedback.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what collaboration looks like, at least for the Supernovas. And I think when you get to that professional sports scenes, because everyone is just so good at what they do, it's just more about getting feedback and seeing how you can raise the level. Because at this point, we're a world-leading organization. And so it's just about coming together and realizing what can we do to keep elevating, because we are leading the charge.
So what I'm hearing, if I'm thinking about that from a high school level, is that really the same constraints that I feel like a lot of high schools talk about is well, for them, especially low budget, obviously, but then because low budget, low staff.
Hmm.
And really at this point with where high school sports is going, you can do a lot with a small staff. It's
Yep.
just using your resources wisely, picking good talent, and that is probably what the next steps will be, I think, in high school sports in the future, right?
Yeah.
Really interesting. Okay, so I didn't write this question
Hmm.
out, but as you were talking about it, I got a little bit interested. Is how, like, with that smaller staff, obviously you each played different roles, and you were talking about how each one of those is very separate, but at the same time, it feels like there's so much happening for the in-venue experience, and that's what people see the most of.
Hmm.
But what happens outside of the venue that you guys are working constantly on doing to prepare for what that in-venue experience looks like?
So obviously sponsorship, going out, meeting different partners. For example, we had a few of our team members out at a golf event yesterday, meeting with sponsors, talking to them about next year. So as far as sponsorship, you're going out, meeting people, making meetings. Like for my own role, I'm back creating press releases, creating game notes so that everyone's informed. I know from a social standpoint, making content calendars, and going to different practices and making content. So everyone's kind of like all over the place. But as far as even preparing for more things in venue, it's just we have a lot of meetings. So
Yeah.
we're talking with a lot of meetings, but it's just about, I don't know, it's kind of just we talk about everything in meetings and then we go out and execute. There
Yeah.
really is no hesitation of that nature.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure you kind of settle into your role and you kind of
Yep.
know like what the next steps will be and
Yep.
what to kind of anticipate, especially once you've been doing it for a while. Do you feel like your team, like, do you guys measure success from a standpoint of like out of venue and out of season? We focus on like getting buzz that moves into
Hmm.
the during season. Is that like, do you guys measure that at all? Or do you just kind of like, it's the same old song and dance? Like,
Yeah. So season ticket members, they're our core. And so that really is what we really focus on once we get going in the off season. Because once this, and really that process starts about a month before the season ends. So it's funny because people think it's like we're all heads down grinding on the current season. But when, for example, we start in January, and when things really start getting to the April, that's when our focus shifts to 2026.
yeah.
And so it's just very fast moving. And you have to balance a lot of different things. And so to get to your question is when we enter that off-season period, it's really about season ticket members, measuring that and growing that base. Because at the end of the day, that is the core of our fan base that makes us successful
Yeah.
in terms of revenue and passion and everything of that sort. So we measure by that, but also community events. We attended 137 different community events from
Wow.
last May to this last January.
Hmm.
Call it the Trophy Tour, coming off a championship. And so, and that's what we pride ourselves on. Community outreach, we are embedding ourselves within the Omaha community. And so that I would say is our two focuses, growing season ticket members, as well as just going out in the community and embracing the fans that really have supported us the last 2 years.
I love that for a lot of reasons, but I sometimes I forget, like, I mean, obviously we're so tied to sports here and we're doing it mostly at the high school level, but I also remember like even at the college level, there is such a huge focus on community engagement. And I feel like the world of social media has made it so that sports does feel a little bit more like a business because of sports or because of athletes' name, image, and likeness. But at the same time, you go back to the foundation of like, this is all about community development,
Yep.
right? Like, this is about supporting who's around us and creating an experience that everyone rallies around that is mutually beneficial, which is why sports have lasted through wars. It's lasted through so many other things. And when the world's not right, sports is still right, right? Okay, so that kind of leads into the next question I have for you, which was that last month in our episode, we talked a little bit about what storytelling looks like from a master of ceremonies perspective. And I know you're not really doing broadcasting anymore, but I know it's been a big foundation for your career. So can you maybe talk a little bit about what does storytelling look like from a broadcaster's perspective?
Yeah, so I've thought about this question too because it's a great question. Thinking about it, as a broadcaster, you're kind of like an ophthalmologist. You're trying to find different lenses to tell stories. And for example, I was calling, funny enough, our flagship radio partner. I'm calling some baseball games for him this summer. And for this game, what kind of lens do I want to put the audience in for the current moment? Because just like glasses and different prescriptions, they get outdated.
Right.
So you need to change that lens and perspective. So first, this baseball game going at one team, not very good. The other has been a long historical power within the area. So painting it as, okay, these two teams, two very different pedigrees, putting that in that lens. And then maybe change out one pair of glasses, put on another and say, hey, this team coming off a little bit of disappointment last year, even though they're an area power, they're trying to recover. Here's what they've done so far this season to get back to that point. So as far as storytelling, what perspective is most relevant to the audience, and then being able to adapt and change depending on the circumstance. That's what I kind of like to think about it.
Yeah. And so it sounds like it's kind of a little bit research based, which I love as a marketer because that's what I do for a living.
And that's me. I'm a stat nerd.
Right. And like you kind of have to dig into it. And I feel like that still exists too at the high school level, right? Like I do feel like there are high school programs that are kind of like legacy builder programs where like you've seen a lot of college athletes come out of that high school program, or maybe it's just the one special college athlete. I personally wish that, and I think about it from even my own high school experience, I wish we would provide more emphasis on that. And I wish we would see more alumni of our high schools come back from college games and, you know, their expanding career and revisit that, because I feel like that is a powerful story. And not that we support one athlete's development, but in the fact that like, hey kids, you can dream and you can do those things. And that's what it's all about, right? Like everybody loves a good dream. I feel like people who are in sports media, they have that same mentality too, right? Like give some love to your sports media people.
Yes.
Have you ever seen the Instagram called Behind the Broadcast?
No, but
You need to look it up.
yeah, no, I definitely will.
It's really cool. It's basically, I don't know who runs it. I'm assuming at this point it's like a group of people, but they cover like different experiences that are happening behind big broadcasts. And it's really cool because they spread a lot of love to the community that's really operating that. And I feel like that's a part of sports that people just don't even think about.
Yeah, and that's one area I've looked more into because, well, I love broadcasting. I like the behind the scenes part as well, and that environment and the way you connect with people and that in that place too. And that place is behind the scenes specifically is not slowing down.
Yeah.
I would say, because when you take a look at, and that's one like internal decision I've had to make and contemplate, is being the talent and getting on air is so tough.
Yeah.
There's no really like consistent upper class, middle class, lower class. It's either like you're at the top of your level making millions of dollars,
Yeah.
or you're at the bottom level making $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
There is really not a whole different like middle class that's comfortable, but not the elite. Well, behind the scenes of production, I feel like it's a lot more balanced.
Interesting.
And there's a lot of different areas that you can grow your skill set in as well.
Yeah. What do you mean by balanced? Like you just feel like everybody has kind of like the ability to grow and expand, or?
Yeah, and in terms of, I would say pay as well, it's a lot
Yeah.
more balanced from that standpoint. And again, there's a lot of different areas that you can go into. While with talent, you're kind of
You're
obviously-
pigeonholed to
yeah,
being a
you're-
performer.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, listen, I'm learning even by hosting this podcast
Yes.
that being a personality or being a performer is hard. Especially, you know what's so interesting to me is I feel like a lot of people who I've met who do these roles as performers or personalities are introverts. And I feel like everybody always thinks that they're extroverts, like that they love to be social. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I would say I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert.
I'm that way too.
Yeah. It's like I have a internal switch, like, okay, time to be my extrovert self.
Yeah.
But then most of the time it's
Yeah, you know how to turn it
Yep.
on, but then you're like, once I'm done, I'm tapped
Yep.
out, right?
So I'm a performer of some sorts, especially when you get to game day, you're meeting a bunch of different people,
Yeah.
media-wise, and running all that sort. So, but then when I come home, I'm exhausted and like, just leave me alone, please.
Yeah. Did you ever have any experience when you were at the Lincoln Journal-Star where you were covering sports media for high schools, or was that a completely different group?
So I was covering high school sports, not sports media specifically.
Yeah.
But high school basketball, football, soccer, some track and field. So I was kind of all over the place. I was the Swiss Army knife in terms of coverage while working there.
Very interesting. Did you like the coordination aspects of that? I've never even, I mean, I'm sure our listeners do, but me personally, I have no idea what that's like. Like, do you coordinate with the athletic directors? Is that how that works?
Yeah, in being only a sophomore in college at that time, your sports editor was your best friend. He would reach out, typically the AD, be like, hey, heads up, we got someone coming to cover you. And you'd show up and it'd be pretty relaxed. They'd have maybe one small table for local media. And especially, well, here in Nebraska, I think is a lot different than maybe what you see in other states. The fact that everyone's so media friendly.
Yeah.
And I think the expectation for media coverage is, I would say, better than maybe other states.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but it just feels like it's very media friendly in that way too. So
Yeah.
It's very interesting though, because think about it now, it points me to a story in Lincoln. It was covering a 6-man football playoff game. Maybe it was Lincoln Christian, but actually no, it was 8-man. And they have this field in Lincoln, and there's no press box. I don't even think there was bleachers. I think it was just a side of a hill, and everyone would bring out their own like seats and everything. And the press box was these 2 stairs that would come up, and then it's just like a wooden platform that was just one long wooden platform, and you had like a railing, and so you'd put your like papers and stuff on the railing, and that's how you cover it.
Yeah.
But I didn't have there was no room on the railing. So I had to go take 2 like storage boxes. I had to ask like assistant AD, it's like, hey, can I just take these boxes? I have nowhere to go. And he's like, sure, why not? So I stacked 2 boxes, had a piece of paper, had my laptop, and I'm taking like stats of the football game. Truth be told, I hated it. But it's one of those experiences where you're going to be like, well, at least it's not this, you know?
Yeah.
So
you'll never forget it.
Yeah, no, never. I will never, ever forget it.
Man, that is just high school sports in general when it comes to even press boxes. Like, I can't tell you how many press boxes I've been in where I'm like, this feels like an OSHA violation if I've ever seen one. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more still about the broadcasting side, although I do know obviously your role looks a lot different now because you are handling so much of like the coordination and the organization and all of that fun stuff. But I know that there are a lot of programs now, which I guess kind of goes off of thinking about what we were just talking about, where like, yeah, there's media who show up to high school games, but I also feel like I wonder how much that's transitioned now that live streaming for high schools has become such a large thing. And so I feel like there are more high schools who have kids who are doing broadcasting. What are maybe like your top 3 tips that you would give those students if they're listening to this?
Yeah, so I would say, again, being a lot research-based and being a stat nerd, it's like preparation is key.
Yeah.
And rule of thumb, and John Schrader, who I've kind of 2 broadcasting mentors, one Robert Goff, for enabling me to really dive into wanting to go into sports media and be a broadcaster. And then John Schrader at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, one of the professors of the broadcasting program who, funny enough, connected with Mr. Goff that brought me over to Lincoln. And preparation, he said, is if you know you prepped enough, is that you only use 10% of what you wrote down and looked up. That's how you know you prepared well.
Yeah.
Because that's typically what happens.
Yeah.
So preparation, get your names right. Very, very important, because you're going to get that text or comment from a parent being like, oh, you didn't say my son's name or daughter's name right. So get those names right. Go down, talk with the PA, talk with the coach. Just get those names right. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
That last one, be authentic to yourself. You can try to, and that's something I learned as I went on, trying to really copy some of my favorite broadcasters. But at the end of the day, some of the reasons why some people are so successful is that they are themselves the entire time, and people like that. And I think we're getting to a day and age where everything is so saturated with so much content that if you're authentically yourself, that's going to stand out more than trying to do something else that isn't you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I do feel like, especially with social media, it's a different world as far as like authenticity, and even with like AI now, it's a whole different ballgame. Talking a little bit about the preparation stuff makes me think a little bit more of and correct me if I'm wrong, but I find it very interesting when I think of sports. I think about two sides, right? Home team, away team. This is a competitive thing. We're not friends. We're here to boogie down and hopefully, fight till the death situation, right? But then when I think about like the sports media teams and what that looks like to me, sports media, at least here in Nebraska for sure, is a community, right? Like everybody knows everybody. So when you're talking about preparation, especially when you're thinking about it at a high school level, how are you getting the information? Like, is that coming from the other team? Are you doing research from like other media? Or is it that you have good relationships with other sports media specialists who are at other schools, and so you're able to share and pass information back and forth?
Yeah, so it's a mix of all. So one, talk with the coaches that because almost all coaches are going to be very friendly, especially if you're in high school, the broadcasting program, they're going to be very friendly about it. So just like reach out. For example, during our football season, every week I'd go down and talk with our head football coach, Brandon Cool, and we sit in the locker room and I'd film like a 10-minute interview that we would show during pregame. So reach out to one of your home coaches, but also reach out to the opposing coaches. Again, they're going to be very friendly. It's only going to be one in a million if you get a coach that be like, no, I'm not going to share anything with you. Yeah. So they're going to be a lot more friendlier than you think, and that could extend to if opposing school has another broadcasting program. Again, like you mentioned, we're all kind of one community. We're all going for the same goals. So don't be discouraged or afraid to reach out and just ask.
Yeah. Everybody wants a good experience, right?
Yep.
I feel like Dwayne talked on that last week where he was talking about just in general that it feels like the separation of home and away, like obviously there's home field advantage or that type of thing, but away teams, like you want to honor the game. Like that's what this is about. It's not like it's a respectful situation where you've invested your time as an athlete. Your parents have invested in you. And that's what makes it so great is the community aspect. I know that there's not a lot of situations where schools at this point don't have broadcasting programs, but there are some. And so what I want to talk about is there a way or a suggestion that you have for kids who don't have access to broadcasting for them to explore their interest in this today?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things. One, if you want to get direct experience right away, go to some game, bring a tape recorder, and record yourself.
Yeah.
Act like you're in the World Series and you're calling the game in terms of, preparing, research, everything of that sort. Record yourself, go back and listen, critique yourself, and maybe even send it off to someone that you might know that's in broadcasting to get feedback. Because that right there is just a quick way to, one, instantly grow and get feedback on. Two, you would be shocked of how many local radio stations would love some help. So if you just reach out to your local radio station saying, hey, I'm looking to get some experience, just getting a foot in the door, and even if that's for free, working for free, board hopping, going out and shadowing, you'd be very surprised at how many are very open to that sort of thing.
I think that's really good advice. I really like the idea of also kind of doing it on your own, and maybe you do that in conjunction with doing the radio station. I didn't talk about this last week, but ScoreVision actually has a product. I try not to plug our own products, but it's kind of relevant in this situation. It's called SV Capture. It's basically just the ability to use your mobile device and then to be able to record video content. And then it saves to our cloud, and then you can broadcast it out in various different distribution platforms. But what I find so interesting about the concept of that is I feel like so many kids, one of the first hurdles that they say is, well, I don't have access to something. And you do now. You have access to your phone.
Yep.
And that's probably the most powerful tool that we've been given in the modern day. And so take advantage of that, right? And lean into that and find a way to do what you love and explore. And I think you should explore while you're younger because I think even when you're in college, there's something about exploratory formative years that impact you once you hit your 30s and
Yep.
life looks different.
You don't have as much time to explore when you have bills to pay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so talking about your career, and obviously, like I've said now a couple times, it's very versatile, so it can be literally almost anything. I wanted to talk about what is one moment, whether it's good, challenging, or unexpected, that has happened in your career, and it's taught you something super important.
It's a good question because been a lot of different things, and I would say that it was probably the moment that I became the sports director for KRNU. This is a good moment, thankfully. Is so I initially started just as like part of the sports staff, helping run broadcasts for the student radio station. So really kind of hands-on. And when I became sports director for my junior and senior year, which isn't normal. Typically, it's just a senior, but I got promoted to it in junior year. And taking up that role and managing and influencing and giving advice to young broadcasters coming up through the program, that's kind of when it clicked to me that, while I did love the performer on air side, I love the management side of being able to organize and see different broadcasters grow in their craft and being able to grow a base of broadcasters that really kind of represented the University of Nebraska in a very good way, and showcase the talent that specifically Coach AMC and Lincoln has. And so when I was doing that, that's when it kind of clicked to me that I don't necessarily need to go into on-air broadcasting in terms of a career. I love that behind the scenes and management side. And so I think once I experienced that side of it, that's when things kind of maybe started to roll in a different direction. But having the broadcasting experience in my back pocket, again, that's going to come up and be big for me in the future, I would say, too.
Right. Just giving you the experience so you can relate. Do you feel, and you don't have to answer this, so we can always cut it out, but can you tell us about a time where, like, I feel like, especially in this career that you've chosen, where you are a personality, but also, like you said, now you're a little bit more behind the scenes, and on a 12-person team, it's a professional team. You're getting worldwide coverage. Is there ever a moment in your career that you can think of where you were like, this is crazy, and I don't know if I can do this, because it's just like a lot of pressure and also growing pains. And can you describe that for us and maybe shed some light on what failure can look like?
So it was definitely probably our first ever match with the Supernovas. And like looking back on now, it's like it's actually not as bad as you think in time. But in terms of getting ready for everything, we hosted the first ever professional volleyball match in PVF history. So a lot of pressure. Yeah. We had over 11,000 people in attendance, and we had so much media. We had basically all the local media outlets, which was over half a dozen, plus another half dozen national outlets coming to the match. And granted, this is my first ever match as a sports information / director of communications. So organizing everything in terms of setting up the media meal, printing out match notes, printing out stats, getting seat labels, figuring out where everyone sits, all that sort of thing. Excuse me. But also figuring out where people can go sit on the court and shoot photo and video, all sorts of things. And when I showed up for the first match, I was already running behind. Then all of a sudden, when I get there, I learned that Bolt 6, which is the camera system that's used for replays, that had to be moved on top of Media Row, eliminating 2 media seats that I had already planned to have people sit in.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden that's thrown off, and I'm just scrambling. And the printer I had bought to print and run stats in real time, that's not working. And so everything was just kind of falling apart a little bit from that perspective. And so going through that and just everything that comes with being a first match, it was just very draining. And a little bit discouraging. Yeah. But I would always say, reflect back on it. I like to do this with papers too. Write your full paper. Leave it alone for 24 hours, because you're just going to look at it and you're going to be like, oh, I hate this. This is dumb. Leave it alone. come back, evaluate, and see what you actually think. And when I did that, it was like, okay, a few things went wrong. They're fixable. Nothing did really, it wasn't disaster level.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's as bad now, but that moment was pretty draining.
Yeah, challenging for
Yeah.
sure. And I'm sure, I mean, I feel like when you're in a career like this, and really any career, I would say, honestly, sometimes you have to have those hurdles. Like it's literally growing pains, right? Like you're figuring it out and you have to overcome them. And I think what makes good, successful leaders in especially the business of sports in every single way, between athlete, coach, athletic director, and even in sports media, is when you experience something that's a setback, it's your decision whether or not you're going to continue to go. And if you do, that's what makes you good at your job, because every single person experiences that in a different way. Where do you see the future of sports broadcasting heading, especially for high school level? I mean, you had a little bit of experience with your time at Kearney, and then you were working a little bit with Strive, right,
Yep.
for a little while. So do you have any takes on that, on what you think is coming?
Yeah. So when me and Mr. Goff first started the broadcasting program, very much on our own, building it up by ourselves. And not to say we didn't have support, but it was just very much us two helping build that out. I think what you're going to see now, and just like with his college and NIL and everything bringing in-house, I think you're going to start to see the broadcasting program really start to blend in with one of the athletic departments of high schools and just like the general public school system in general. Because now all of a sudden, instead of just kind of a startup, fun broadcasting program, it is a direct, big-time representation of your school. And it's basically advertising of your school too. So I think you're really going to start to see a blend of maybe the athletic director having an input and maybe some boosters and all that. So I really start to think that's going to become one versus maybe a little bit of a separate entity covering school events and sports.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about that, because as you were saying that, all I could think about in addition is that I see a world in which athletic facilities or athletic directors and that portion of academics, right,
Yep.
is tied more into a school-wide branding, marketing department. And I don't want to scare the crap out of principals and all of that, but I think there's a future where that will be the case. I mean, schools look so much different, and getting community involvement, it's not like you're out there trying to market things in hopes that you're going to make money. Obviously, schools aren't making money off of any of this. But you are out there trying to grow community involvement. And so in a lot of ways, it works like a nonprofit.
Yep.
Nonprofits have to have marketing teams too. And so you're expanding that brand. And I could see how that and broadcasting would all kind of tie together to be very well-rounded. Do you have any advice for high school students or anything that you would tell yourself as a former high schooler and college sports media person that you feel like you wish you would have had back then?
Yeah. So again, this is something I learned from John Schrader, is writing is the core of everything. Get good at writing, because no matter what you go in, that's going to be key.
Yeah.
So if you're good there, you're going to be fine probably in a lot of different areas. So I would say do that, but also go out and just experience as much as you can. It's cliche, but never say no to an opportunity, because you never know when it's going to come back. I'll take this for example. Private radio, when I first started sophomore year, the news director, his name was Caleb Henry, and knew him throughout the years after my experience there. He eventually went to Des Moines, but then came back to Lincoln and worked for KLIN, the local radio station there. So when I was at Inside Nebraska, it's like, hey, he works there now. So I collaborated with him on a couple of things radio-wise. And now I work part-time as a Husker Max contributor, so I write part-time too, and he's the editor of that. So if I don't take the opportunity, I don't know Caleb, I don't get these couple opportunities down the road. So everything kind of leads back to one another.
Yeah, my mom calls that the string of pearls.
Yep.
And I've had that in my career as well, which it's so interesting to like look back and see like all of the relationships I've developed over my lifetime, they all were leading to something else. Talking about the writing portion, just a curious hot take. This wasn't on our list at all, but I feel like with AI, students lean a lot on that now to do some writing. And not that that's a bad thing, but I'm curious from your perspective where, especially you're covering experiences, AI can't experience the things that you've experienced.
Yep.
And so, like, what are some tips that you might give for someone who's trying to kind of like tap into their writing skills and really like dive into that outside of AI doing it for them?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, just like writing and getting feedback, sending to professors, different writing professionals. So, because to me, I pride myself on being quick to make adjustments and improving, and I think I've shown that over. If I make one mistake, okay, I'm going to fix that and prepare for anything that might happen again. So, I would say, write it up, send it off to professionals, even if it's someone who writes for the New York Times or the LA Times. Send it off and just see if they have any feedback that they want to tell you. People are a lot more friendly than you might think.
Yeah. And good to kind of form an emotional connection.
Yep.
Back to the story, which I've learned over my course of writing that is something that is hard to do sometimes. Okay, I'm going to do a rapid fire round. So I'll ask these questions really quickly, answer them as honestly and as quickly as you can as well. First and foremost, who is your favorite athlete of all time?
LeBron James.
That is a very good one. What has been your most iconic sports call of your career so far?
It's not a great call, but it's when Kearney High School, my senior year of high school, they hit a game-winning field goal to go to the state championship.
That's awesome. Better seat, press box, or courtside?
Depending on the sport. Football, press box every day. No, every day. I'm not going outside in football. I'd like to be up in the press box. But basketball, volleyball, indoor sports, except for hockey, courtside.
Except for hockey. Love that. What is your dream event you'd love to call someday?
So this has changed. One, because I've recently, this is about third year now, I'm really big into F1. And I would say that out of all the races, I would say the British Grand Prix.
That is amazing. Well, Geoff, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Ashley. It was wonderful to be here.
Woohoo!